What's your name and how are you feeling?
My name is Sterlin. Are we starting now?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, nice. Okay, so yeah, my name is Sterlin Lujan.
Yeah.
And how am I feeling? I'm feeling fantastic.
Have you been to church today? Sunday.
Have you been to church? I've been to the Church of the Mind today.
Nice. I like that. It's with you and your mind.
Yeah, that's right. I usually use my Sundays to spend time reading, almost always.
What are some of your book recommendations or some interesting books you are maybe reading right now or in the past?
Yeah, so I read pretty widely, so I'll give a bit of a scope of what I've been reading recently. So I recommend The Psychology of Totalitarianism by Matthias Desmond, which is really a critique on the COVID pandemic psychological crisis, totalitarianism from the technocratic state.
Right. It kind of appeared during COVID. You saw its face.
Yeah. Yes. Yep. And that was a whole agenda from the World Economic Forum. It's kind of built into their way of thinking, Agenda 2030, etc. So that's a really good book. If you want to learn more about that topic and how people easily get entranced by a state and how they easily follow orders. This idea of mass formation is really important.
What is the Agenda 2030? I'm not familiar with it.
Yeah, so there's the World Economic Forum has this agenda for helping to, from their point of view, improve the world. They have these Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs,
Right.
where they want to get all of the other countries around the world to follow these particular rules and patterns for improving the world. But here's the problem: they're not sustainable and they're not developmental because they all involve coercion on a grand scale, right? Telling other people how to live and what to do, essentially forcing these other governments to adopt their plans to force people how to manage and how to live their lives.
Right.
It's authoritarian in nature.
I see.
It's like one world government type of scary shit.
Scary. Okay. So that's one book.
But yeah,
some light Sunday reading.
Yeah, so another book that I'm reading, I love reading about history. So there's a book by Mary Beard called S.P.Q.R. about the rise of the Roman Republic and its eventual fall as an empire.
That's pretty epic.
Yeah, it's really good. It's really good. So I'm a huge fan of trying to understand why some cultures and some ancient societies went into the memory hole.
Yeah.
What was lost touch. Very few people are familiar with the Carthaginian Empire, right, which Rome utterly and completely destroyed.
Yeah. And how much it rhymes with today's empires, kind of.
Yep.
Similar power struggles.
Yep. It's a lot of the same kind of stuff. Competition over land, competition over resources, competition over control of people, management of people.
Yep.
And it's really one of the great tragic affairs and one of the great conceits of our world.
Are you writing yourself at the moment?
Yeah, so I'm a published author. I've written a book called Dignity and Decency, Rhapsodic Musings of a Modern Anarchist. It's a collected works inspired by a writer in the 19th century named Voluntary de Clercq, who was an anarchist.
Really?
An anarchist, yeah.
Cool.
And then I'm working on my second book right now, and it's about network states and all the different ways network states can emerge and how parallel governance will help us opt out of the current system and hopefully undermine it over time.
You are in the right place to write about that. You probably get a lot of discussions on that topic.
Yep, a ton. I'm actually doing a lecture on Wednesday on this precise topic. I'm just calling it network history. So we get into some of the history, but also some of the paths and the praxis to realizing these ideas.
That's perfect. I'll upload this on Tuesday, so then it's like, come to the...
Yeah, nice.
Yeah. So what excites you about network states? Maybe in the present moment, and then we can talk about the future.
Sure. Yeah, in the present moment, the ability to immediately not only opt out of the current systems we live in and to engage in the digital nomad mindset, but also the idea of being around people who share the ideas and values. I think the human connection part is just so important. like learning to empathize and to connect.
Yep.
And to be with people who share a similar mindset. That's extremely powerful. And then all the innovative spirit that's here. A lot of entrepreneurs, creators, thinkers, writers, and have all come together to try to realize this vision. And I think that's extremely powerful.
Special about coming together. I mean, the beginning of something, there's a lot of energy.
Yes, a ton of it. A lot of creative juices flowing.
Yeah, I kind of feel it. I feel that.
Yeah.
But on the other part, then on network states, ideally, how do you not avoid of creating a new kind of, state, a new totalitarian government type of scenario?
Sorry, what was the question?
I was thinking, just came to my mind that how do you see the future of then these network states? Where are we going from here?
I think already we're seeing there are a panoply of network states or parallel governance models that are cropping up. First in the form of territorial decentralization. So just an example of a few. So you have Prospera, right, in the island of Roatan in Honduras.
Yep.
And then Vitalia, which is also part of that, which is a network state that's focused on, or pop-up city with a network state that's focused on human longevity, biotech, and research.
They seem to be experiencing some trouble with the government right now. Are you familiar with that?
I'm loosely familiar with, so one of the problems that they've had, I think, is they've been characterized a little bit as colonialists, right, by the local population. So they become an effective scapegoat for anything that goes wrong. The government gets to just offload blame to those guys. I don't know all of the intricate details of and the politics surrounding it. By design, because I don't know if I want to burden my head with that, but yes, they've had some issues as a result.
Even though they are creating all these jobs and new companies and just a lot of economic activity.
Yeah, correct. That's one of the good things about the network state opportunity. And I want to be clear about something. This is an important discussion. So just because you have a pop-up city or a special economic zone or a smart city, whatever you want to call it, does not de facto mean that it is a network state.
Yeah, for sure. And as Prospera shows, they're still at the mercy of whatever government has hosted them.
That's right, a host country will control it. So a network state, ultimately, when it comes to full fruition and we realize the vision, has its own governance structure set up. That's a big part of the network state idea, I think that a lot of people miss. There's governance, both in the cloud and on the land, that people voluntarily opt into. And in my opinion, network states do not even have to have a physical territoriality.
Can you double click on that for on Prospera's example? What do you think they could do instead, or what are they missing?
So I think they're doing great. Here's the thing: Prospera does have a technology stack of governance applications that they use. I haven't looked into the details of how that's working, but it does seem like they have a mindset to developing their own governance model with rules, with contracts, with tokenization. But it hasn't become fully realized yet. But I think they would seek to have sovereignty and autonomy, and I think that would be a goal of a lot of network states. Balaji talks about it in his book, The Network State, the idea of gaining diplomatic recognition, and that's akin to having sovereignty. Personally, I don't even think in the long-term vision that will be necessary, especially if we have network states that have cypherpunk values built into them. That means strong privacy and anonymity safeguards. That's a whole nother discussion.
But ideally, you would want to be not at all connected to a nation state.
Correct.
Because we know that's like the goal there.
Correct. Yeah, we want to. That whole model is corrupted, perverted, broken, and based ultimately on coercion and the centralization of power. We're trying to decentralize power. We're trying to escape having to rely on that model or having to mimic that model or be involved in some type of mimesis regarding what they're doing. So I think ultimately the long-term vision is that we create a society that's built thoroughly on a decentralization thesis.
It's very interesting. So what are some other maybe aspects of the network state that you find we should talk more about, or our issues are interesting, maybe.
Yeah.
Anything comes to mind?
Yeah, I think one of the things that's going to be really challenging is for those of us like you and I, Max, we want to. I think we do want to have a physical location where we can connect with like-minded people, because the
100%.
human element is really important. So a lot of people, when they think about networks, they think about what I call the logical algorithm, right? Building the technology, thinking about the way that the governance is structured, thinking about the economics, but also important is what I call the emotional algorithm, which is the idea that we have to learn to connect with each other better, resolve our disputes, have strong communication, and it's through those processes that help minimize corruption, centralization of power, infighting. And get this, we're not always going to be able to solve for psychopathy and sociopathy in society, right?
Yeah.
There's always going to kind of be that phenotype of individuals,
100%.
right?
That's the game.
Yep. But we have to be able to work together to reduce the influence that those people can possibly have in our society, right? Okay, there's a famous quote by Frank Herbert, who wrote Dune. He said,
he was a smart man.
Oh man, just a towering genius. He said that it's not that power corrupts absolutely, a la Lord Acton. It's that power is magnetic to the corruptible. Right. So when you have a centralized power apparatus, you're going to invite the attention of the worst possible people in society, right? Because then you can legally commit atrocities.
And it just has to happen one time. You can have good leaders, and then you get a corrupt leader, and then that kind of destroys it for everyone.
Yeah, it's pretty much game over, because the corrupt leader, oftentimes they're insulated by the regulatory apparatus and by the system, and then they have a bunch of sycophants following them around. Effectively urging them to continue doing bad, because they're also lining their pockets. So it creates this feedback loop of corruption, decay, decadence, just outright civilizational destruction overall. And it's just a skewed incentive structure, right? We're talking about economics.
Yes.
So
it's a delicate thing.
It is, and that's again why we're here. That's why we're trying to develop these networks. We're trying to figure out the most optimal solution for governance that tempers the worst parts of our humanity.
I like that. And then you're probably going to break some eggs while making the omelet.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, so Timothy May in 1992 wrote an article called "Libertaria in Cyberspace," which is an early progenitor for the network state idea. And one of the things he said is that's important about these ideas is that they have rapid self-selection, they have experimentation, and they're evolutionary, so that we can very quickly learn from our mistakes. We can build these out.
Feedback loop.
Yeah, that's right. We can learn from just like the lean startup model, right?
We
get some,
but with ideas in general and network states.
Yeah, that's right. So we experiment with everything. We figure out what works and what doesn't, and we implement the best practices to reduce corruption, violence, and the centralization of power over time. And also, we have to remember the important part of this is to ensure that there's very low switching costs, there's very low exit costs, so you can easily exit if you don't like the network state that you're involved in, you can go to another one. And that keeps the ones that exist honest, because now they're having to play in a market environment. They're having to actually serve their netizens or their citizens, rather than try to control and to micromanage them.
The incentives are set right.
That's right. It's all about behavioral economics.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, I think that's actually the key. A lot of people, like Vitalik in his talk yesterday, mentioned how solving governance is really hard.
Yep.
I think it is hard. He's probably referring to the technological component. But I would say, philosophically, we have a bunch of tools at our disposal around our understanding of psychology over the last few centuries, and our most recently our understanding of behavioral economics, trying to figure out how to subdue Moloch dynamics, right? Understanding game theoretic scenarios and how people respond to the incentives on the market. I think we try to build those. I'm going to talk about this in my talk too on Wednesday.
Nice.
How can we build those into our governance structures in a gamified sort of way that enhances good behavior and weeds out bad behavior.
It's really interesting. We have so many tools. We're not just let's use it and put our attention on this and see where it
Absolutely.
goes. Where are you from originally?
I'm from Texas originally.
Texas. And you're based now?
So yeah, still based in like the Dallas area, Texas. But my wife and I are quasi-nomadic. We spent most of our time in Europe last year.
How does that look in detail? Quasi-nomadic.
So yeah, we spend about 2 to 3 months in States, and then the rest of the time traveling to different places. Roughly
2 to 3 months in the States.
Yeah, and then the rest of the time traveling.
Right. Is that so that you have tax residence still in the US?
Yeah, yes, and that's a whole nother discussion. I would prefer not to have tax residence in the U.S., but they make it tremendously difficult to get out of that, right? Even if you move to another country, that doesn't negate your tax requirements. You have to renounce your citizenship to get out of the tax requirements. The U.S. is one of the few countries that will actually chase you around to tax you.
And that goes back to what we were talking about, this that the customer can choose.
That's right.
It's very hard to choose as a U.S. citizen.
It very much is. So assume my wife and I decide to join a network state officially. At that point, I will try to go through the process of renouncing citizenship so I can get all the...
There's some exit tax or everything? But it's a whole ordeal, I imagine.
Yeah, it's really expensive. There's a lot of paperwork, bureaucracy. Typically, you have some attorney help you. Yeah, it's a lot.
Okay, you see, people still are quite optimistic on Texas. I feel when I hear people from the States, like people are moving to Texas away from California. Do you agree with this?
Yeah, that's an accurate statement. I think overall, if you're going to live in the States, Texas is one of the better states to live in, right? There's no state-based income tax. There's just, of course, the federal income tax. And also, Texas has become a hub for crypto from entrepreneurs.
Right.
So a lot of mining operations have actually centered in Texas, leveraging renewable resources like wind energy and solar energy.
Cool. Let's turn around so we get to the shade in the supermarket.
Right.
It's better.
Yeah, now I'm panting and breathing.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I promised you shade, but I don't know this place.
No, it's all right. This is actually really good. This is a very solar punk.
It is beautiful place for sure.
Okay, swimming, not a bad idea.
Yeah, we'll get to that. So you have one child. What is something you've learned from being a father?
Oh, actually, no children.
No children. Didn't you say a child? No?
Yeah, no. Maybe, miss.
I must have misheard you.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah, my wife and I actually, that's another topic. We decided that we were going to focus on our travels and my work, and I'm doing a lot of writing. And our life is not conducive to children right now, so we purposely decided not to have children.
Fair enough. Understandable.
At least right now.
Also, I've been inspired to see people here at the network school come with their children and spouses. And
that is good.
I didn't expect that.
Yeah, I didn't either until I saw that it was I read that it was quote-unquote family-friendly, which I thought was amazing.
Yeah, that's a good. I think if you want something long-term, it probably should be somewhat family-friendly.
I agree. Yep, I agree.
How deep are you into crypto then?
What's that?
Crypto? How deep are you into it?
Okay, so yeah, my background is primarily in crypto on the communication side. I've worked in the cryptocurrency industry for 10 years.
Wow.
So I've been,
writing for different
companies. Like for instance, I worked starting in 2015 with Bitcoin.com. Did that for 3 years.
Wow, that's early. This goes down.
Yeah, I helped open up that news desk. Wrote some of the first articles on Bitcoin.com.
Nice.
Okay.
Wasn't Vitalik also a writer at the start for some Bitcoin related?
Yeah, Vitalik wrote for Bitcoin Magazine.
Bitcoin Magazine. Okay, I was going to say. Okay, so you've been in. That's a long time, 10 years.
Yeah, it is. I've seen it all, man. I was there for the scaling debate. I was there for all the crypto market crashes and the consolidation phases, and then the next run-ups. But I haven't let the market. This is a good talk. I haven't let the market perturb my interest or enthusiasm for crypto, because my focus is always on principle, cypherpunk values,
Yes.
crypto-anarchist values.
Yes.
So if I'm focused on that, I don't have to worry about YOLOing into some random shit coin.
Yeah, I mean that's the beauty of crypto, the decentralization aspect, I suppose.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, the origin, the genesis of cryptocurrency was in cypherpunk and crypto-anarchist values. Some people tried to sweep that under the rug or deny it, but it's very clear that some of the early technologies that went into forming the backbone of the vertebrae of Bitcoin were created by cypherpunks, right? Adam Back is notoriously a cypherpunk. He created hash cash.
What is cypherpunk? Is that something that came along with the internet, or is it before that?
Yeah,
I'm not familiar.
Yeah, okay, yeah, I'd love to talk about this. So first, I'll give you the history. Cypherpunk is a derivation of the phrase cyberpunk. Cyberpunk is a genre in science fiction that was originally coined and written about by the author William Gibson in his book Neuromancer.
Ah, Neuromancer. I've known that.
Fantastic read, by the way. And so what happened is in the 90s, this group of coding desperados got together at their houses in the Silicon Valley area. And during one of these group sessions, so the people involved in these groups are Timothy May, Eric Hughes, and one of their friends, her name was Jude Milhan, and she made a joke. She said, "You guys are like cyberpunks except for strong encryption, so really you're cypherpunks." Right, because the punk...
The punk aspect.
Yeah, the punk
anarchism.
aspect is, it's anarchism, it's fighting back against the system, it's renegade behavior.
Yep, okay, I get it now.
Yep.
That was good.
Yep, that's the genesis of the term. So it's really an amazing story, actually.
And I feel like the internet is such a good place for people who like freedom and anarchism, I suppose. Like for the first time you can do a lot of things without being in the, being shut down by the whoever controls violence.
Yeah, that's right. There's a phrase that we use in the space about building open source technology. It's this idea of permissionlessness. So we can build technology, write code, and we can do that without having to ask permission. Can you imagine if someone asked permission to create Bitcoin, like they went to the central bank, they went to the SEC and were like, "Hey, we're going to make this new token and it's going to compete with the dollar," they would have shit themselves.
Yes.
That would have been a hard no, and then they probably would have threw you in jail right there.
True that. I think it's Balaji also likened it to the Wright brothers when they started flight. What if they had asked for permission? Can we, do this flying car? Would have been a hassle. Taking years. Instead, they just kind of did it.
Yes, absolutely. The bureaucratic regime, it's all, when you try to create something new, and we see this all the time in the FDA, Balaji talks a lot about, it does a lot of critiques of the FDA.
Yep.
When you try to do anything to create change, and especially the positive change, they're going to make your life tremendously difficult. They're going to have a bunch of likely superficial critiques of work.
Yep.
And then all the paperwork and the red tape, the bureaucracy that goes into that. Like, for instance, just give you one example. The MAPS organization, the Multidisciplinary Association of Psychedelic Studies, those guys have been trying to legalize MDMA.
I've read about that, yeah.
Yeah, for a long time. I think Rick Doblin started the organization in the 80s, maybe?
What?
Yeah, like the late 80s. He's been working on this for a long time. I don't think he got serious until like a decade ago. But recently, they're on the cusp. They're like in the third trial, the clinical trials to create MDMA clinics that allow people suffering from PTSD to get the help they need. But just recently, their partner company, forget the name of it, they were denied approval by the FDA.
In the final stage.
Yeah. So it's a huge setback, right? They can still come back and try to retool the stuff. Here's the reason why they did it, though. It's really trivial and trite. So when you do a clinical trial for any kind of drug trial, you usually have a placebo group that doesn't get the drug, right?
Yeah.
And then you have, which is a control group, and then you have the actual experiment group that gets the drug.
Yep.
So the problem is that when you take MDMA, you now know if you're in a placebo group or not, because you're clearly high. It's a psychoactive, right? You know when you're on MDMA.
So that's why they said that the placebo
Yeah,
is not
yeah, that's
valid.
why I said it broke the trial. But everybody knew about that already. They had done most of the trials that were approved to push forward. It was completely arbitrary. And
Why do you think they don't want it to come through?
yeah, I you know what? So already, governments around the world are very much opposed to psychedelic therapy, psychedelic medicine, MDMA, because these compounds dissolve boundaries. They wake people up from what Charles Tarr called a consensus trance, where you're numb and you're subdued to the
Status quo.
That's right, the status quo, the cultural consensus, all that stuff. So this is what happened to me. I actually took MDMA back in 2005 for the first time. It completely woke me up and shook me out of that.
Wow, yeah.
I started thinking, it was like a quantum personality change. I started thinking for the first time, reading to actually learn more and understand more rather than escapism. Yeah. And of course, that naturally made me question, why is this drug illegal? Which is the first step.
Indeed.
Right, and now you're questioning everything else as a result of that, and that's what happened to me.
Is it part of your regimen to do some sort of therapy with MDMA, or was it just a one-time thing?
No, so this is a whole story, but when I did MDMA for the first time, and I realized how powerful it was, I started giving it to all my friends and family, and then it turned into a business. And eventually I got arrested for possession of MDMA, like to the tune of 500 pills. In Texas. Yeah, I thought they threatened me with 40 years in prison.
Wow.
I got lucky and actually was able to get out of that situation. Well, first of all, lucky because the drugs didn't go outside of Texas, or it would have been a federal crime. Because it was so much. So I was able to hire an attorney, and it was just in the city that it happened in, which is in West Texas. And I got a deal for 10 years deferred adjudication probation. Deferred adjudication just meaning that if I complete my probation, I technically don't have a conviction on my record.
Okay, what is probation? And that you are...
So it's like paper prison, right? Where you have to go check into a probation department. You have to pee in cups regularly and have drug tests. And
are you allowed to travel or not?
No, you have to get permission to travel.
Okay, that's
So I did that for 5 years, from roughly 2009 to 2014-ish.
Okay, you really got
so
long sentence.
that was an extremely tough time of my life. I also had a lot of trouble finding jobs. I was working in the traditional ecosystem.
This is crazy that how huge it affects people's lives.
Oh yeah, so there's just been so many people have their lives ruined as a result of the criminal justice system in the U.S. and especially the drug war.
What's some story you can share from your times as an MDMA dealer? Something especially wild or interesting?
Yeah, I think the interesting, I would say, is I went to a lot of raves, and I actually did the distribution.
Let's go back.
For raves, sure.
Yeah.
I did the distribution for raves.
You were the main
guy. I went to underground rave parties, and I thought they were absolutely beautiful. Yeah, there was some debauchery, of course. It was like a drug party that was during a time in Texas when tribal underground ecstatic dance music was extremely popular.
That's so beautiful. People
and
dancing to these tribal
dancing, and they're on MDMA and they're connecting. And I'm not going to say it's like a perfect mini utopia, but certainly it was a culture that inspired thinking outside the box, learning to connect with fellow humans. And overall, it was just an amazing experience. I wouldn't trade it for anything, even regarding what happened to me.
I can imagine.
Yeah, it was a very formative period of my life, and some of the people that I was in contact with then are still friends to this day.
Yeah, I'm sure they are. Wow. Are many do you see, what trends do you see in that group of people? Have they, you have a very special life path, kind of. Have they gone back to the normal 9 to 5, or are they also on the fringe?
Yeah, I would say most of them. You know what? I don't want to speak to this because I don't know. Like the majority of them, I don't have it track of. A lot of my friends though have had some kind of interesting path where even if they stayed in the traditional system, they're more awake and attuned, and they understand the nature of the system. But it wasn't in the cards for them for whatever reason to aspire to do anything particular, peculiar. We call peculiar.
Yeah, but that's a good point, that you can stay within the system and still, have a really nice effect.
Yeah.
Just being a good person within whatever confines you are.
It's not in everybody's bones, no matter how awake they are, to be an activist. Right? I became an activist. That takes a certain type of person. I'm not saying that I'm special, but I am saying that I got into mine were mainly so a lot of those folks didn't get arrested. Where I got arrested and I had that direct
That's quite extreme,
experience with the criminal justice system in the U.S.
It's
and that
brutal.
turned me into an anti-state actor. 100%. It was very personal for me.
Yep, for sure. It's brutal when you realize like they can actually stop all your freedoms like that.
It's completely savage where they can come after you and they can really put your life to an end.
Yeah.
Either on paper or physically by putting you in a cage, right?
Yeah, they have a lot of power.
Oh,
that we
just
rarely
a
see.
tremendous, which is exactly why we're all here at the network state to try to minimize this, because what's happening is not only so a lot of people don't talk about the U.S. They talk about it as a progressive nation, as a place where people have their rights, as a place of freedom. You hear people parrot the idea that people are free in the U.S.
Yeah.
So the U.S. Let's have some sobering, down-to-earth facts. It has one of the largest prison populations in the whole world.
That's true.
The most people in prison. These guys do regular no-knock raids on people who allegedly possess a certain quantity of drugs in a house. There's so many laws on the book right now that a guy named Harvey Silverglate wrote a book called 3 Felonies a Day. So you can wake up as a normal citizen, go about your normal routine, go to work, come home, and by then you've committed 3 felonies. Because there's so many erroneous, silly, trite, incomprehensible laws on the books that you can literally be breaking one every part of the day, potentially.
So America also has this very poor part of the population, and it also has the ultra rich.
Yeah, that's a huge disparity in the elite versus the sort of the lower classes, and it is a behemoth. Really, the U.S. is an empire in the traditional and the classical sense of the term.
What's your intuition on what type of network state, like examples, what it could look like for you, maybe, like an ideal?
Yeah,
it's hard to say because it's so early, but what are if you sketch a bit?
Yeah, I would say that a network state that embodies the ideals of voluntary, like the idea that all of our relationships are as consensual as humanly possible.
Yeah.
So you asked me to come and do this talk with you, and I voluntarily consented, made it without coercion. So everything that we do that doesn't harm another person is consensual, right? Like if I wanted to give an MDMA pill to someone here,
and
that's consensual, right? Even if it has risks, that's their choice.
Right.
Right.
Freedom.
That's right. And then the second part is, this differentiates between a lot of other people who are thinkers in the network state space. I actually am invested, this is personal for me, in trying to undermine the traditional systems, even if I'm outside of the scope of it, because it hurts and harms and damages so many people's lives. So I'm a huge fan of embracing like what I call network agorism. Right? And so agorism is a philosophy that was developed by anarchist thinker Samuel Edward Compton III. And his idea was that we create these black and gray circular economies for trade outside the regulatory apparatus of the nation state to take the power away from it.
Was this pre-internet or?
Yeah, this was mostly pre-internet. I think he was writing in the 80s. Like a mix of it, I think into the 90s.
Because that was hard to do before internet. But now with the internet, you can kind of imagine how we could form our own networks of trade and whatnot.
Yep, absolutely. So his thing was, horizontal agorism. These networks of people doing trades under the table, black and gray, which means things that are illegal, but also things that are quasi-legal.
Maybe we do one more.
And so my idea is that we apply this agoristic philosophy to network states, and it's what I'm calling network agorism, which I'm working on an article about this right now.
Right.
And so what this means is that we set up these governance solutions to sap power, and we talked a little bit about this, or touched on it earlier, sap power from the nation state incrementally over time. Because having a competing governance model means that the nation state has a chance of losing its people. Right? It's be like human capital flight, brain drain.
Yep.
And now they're thinking they have to compete.
Yes.
So it's not like necessarily abolition of the state, but it is an abolition on the territorial monopoly on violence.
And do I understand correct that just by building a good alternative we are kind of undermining them.
Yes,
Because
yes.
we don't have to actively do bad.
That
We just do
yes,
very good.
Yes, and I want to be clear that I'm not an advocate, and I think this is clear for you. I'm not an advocate of violence or any kind of insurrectionary spirit of the old school anarchist.
Yeah.
I do think that, but I am a huge fan of Gandhi's idea of satyagraha.
What is that?
So satyagraha is loosely translated as truth force, and it's a non-violent resistance.
I like that.
Purposely resist, like Gandhi fighting against colonialism in India. He actually went out there and basically stood in front of the British regime and said, "No, you're not going to do this," and they just chilled there, right? Some people died as a result.
Yeah, but they also.
So they didn't enact violence themselves.
And they didn't have an army, so it was a really good way to do it.
100%, and eventually, that worked. Now Gandhi is immortalized in his work.
But so this is one aspect of it, creating this. What do you call the network of?
Network agorism.
Yes. So what about some more? If you would sketch a bit more, what it could look like? Examples.
Yeah, I think so. One of the things that has to happen too, aside from the activist components, which I'm a fan of, we also have to figure out a way to offer certain public goods, right, and public services that governments offer as an actual service rather than being mandatory. So there's basic things like police or defense, insurances of various kinds, so different types of charities, right? So we do that.
Could this not be provided just as companies, as services
Yes.
in a capitalistic environment?
Yes. That's part of it. The network state itself, as a decentralized hub, technology infrastructure, could offer like smart contract-based technological solutions as well, alongside private enterprises that may not be as technologically advanced.
Fair.
So there's an interplay of private market versus technology that could emerge to offer these services. So there's a guy named Trent McDonald who wrote a piece wrote an article, a very detailed and really good article called Unbundling the State. So his idea was to unbundle, unwrap these governance services from the state, and then offer them, on a dynamic market.
As the free market, kind of.
Yeah, that's right. Each individual piece is offered, and then there could actually exist overlapping governance models, but he would suggest that this could happen in a same territory, right? So you don't need territorial decentralization. You could actually do this in a same territory where people get to opt into their different governance models living in the same place.
Because even just by allowing for competition, people could choose, do they want the open market or the government alternative, and you could see what cost is. The government is probably a lot more inefficient, so they will just lose if you get this sort of free money.
That's right. On a market, if you're inefficient and you don't serve your customers, you're doomed, right? Traditional governance, the nation state, doesn't have to, those incentives don't exist, right? Because it just prints money at will, right? The guys can press a red button, right? The Federal Reserve Bank, print a button, or hit a button, print out as much money as they want, expropriate wealth from the population via taxation, and just run their institutions however they see fit, because they created a monopoly. There's no competitors allowed in most of these situations. Right?
Maybe they had good intentions at the start, but it has become a bit slow and, how do you say?
Yeah, slow, cumbersome, inefficient, broken, corrupt.
Yeah.
All the words. All the words.
So, what do you see is the biggest threshold for this change coming about? What is?
Yeah, I think we're gonna.
The bottleneck is for.
Yeah, I think we're gonna continue to see a critical mass of people interested in this idea, especially as we create models that work. Right. And I mean, work by we have a governance regime of some kind, and that we have a success story, right, of growing a population.
That's why I feel it's what's so sad that Prospera and Italia now is under attack by the locals, because it looked like a success story, and now that sort of set. Let's hope they make it.
Yeah, I think they're going to be okay. So what happens is governments are going to. So if they're not going to outright come after us with guns and bombs and drones and whatever autonomous weapons that they may dredge up, what they're going to do, watch your step.
Holy shit, that was fast.
So what they're going to do, the government's first line of attack is always through propaganda, using media,
information.
That's right. character assassination, smear campaigns. So this is already probably what's happening in prosperity luxury. They're going to paint them in the most damnable light that they can and make them look as bad as possible.
Yes.
And then, of course, all the drooling, slobbering masses, of course, are going to rally in the defense of government. So this is probably going to happen for the longest time.
Mainstream media will push this agenda.
Yeah. But I think, I think we're already in a stage where a lot of people have lost faith in mainstream media as things are starting to change, right?
Yeah.
Because of the information circulation, there's a good chunk of people waking up. In this sense, I'm very much an optimist. I do think that there's always going to be sort of lower vibrational people. Some people would use the phrase lower IQ people. I just say lower vibrational people. But how we create change in society all the time is by having that critical mass of people actually create the change, and then laggards, right, lower vibrational people immediately kind of follow the trend.
Right. So what I hear is it's a lot about the information warfare and making it mainstream, kind of. Also by creating it, but also about talking about it and writing about it and doing whatever decentralized media about it.
That's right. Yeah. And we have decentralized media now. We have alternative media, and there's a ton of resources out there for anybody who wants to escape the establishment and consensus trends.
Yes.
Mentally, they can do that right now. They don't have to be locked into a mental prison.
Yeah. But the mental prison of today is this attention scarcity. We are so locked in our phones, kind of busy.
Yeah.
Also, but that's a different topic.
Yeah, there's two sides to that coin, right? If you don't have a focus or a goal yourself, it's very easy just to get entrapped and entranced by various forms of media. Some of it very ridiculous or not useful, mentally sabotaging. And you definitely don't want to do that, right? You want to have an understanding of where you're going. You want to be conscious and aware of what you're consuming media-wise.
Where can people find you online? What are you?
Yeah, so you can find me on X at Sterlin Lujan, STERLINLUJAN, easily. And then I have a website, also my name, www.sterlinlujan.com. And then you can also check out the network state stuff that the organization that I work with is working on. It's called Logos.
Nice.
So logos.co.
Oh, cool. What organization is this?
Yeah, so Logos is a technology stack organization that is developing digital infrastructure for network states.
Beautiful. That should maybe you can get some inspiration from some existing states.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's going to be a lot of stuff happening, and it's going to be legit. Beautiful.
Very cool. I think we could do another one of these once we are further in this network
Sure.
school experiment. Like
Happy
3
to.
months from now, what ideas have emerged and where are we at?
Absolutely. I really enjoyed
I think that would be fun. But I actually enjoyed it as well. Thanks for taking the time.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks, brother.
Yeah, ciao. That was really fun.
Yeah, it was good.